Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, beginning with Daf Yud Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Our Mishnah stated when it comes to the Pesach, the width of the Mavui, it can't be beyond Yud Amos. If it is beyond Yud Amos, Mimait. However, the Mishnah goes on to say that if indeed, even though it's beyond Yud Amos, one can correct it with a Pesach of a Tzuras HaPesach. A kana mikan, and a kara me'al gabehen. Im yesh lo Tzuras HaPesach, afu pisha rocha me'eser, eino tzorich lemait. That's already going to mesakein such a Pesach. Says the Gemara, Eshkechon Tzuras HaPesach de Mahanya, B'rechovoi. We find that the Tzuras HaPesach will be a tikkun for the greater width beyond the Yud Amos. V'amaltero de mahanya begovoy, and amaltero will help with the height. We said the maximum height of a mavui, to put the crossbeam, is not beyond 20 amos. And yet the Gemara on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph taught us that amaltero is such a thing that will enable us to mesakein even the height. In other words, amaltero means if you have a certain type of, let's say, a nest of a bird to embellish the wall, thereby a person will then put his eyes on that area of the wall. So even if it's beyond 20 amos, it'll be a tikkun allowing the kara to be placed on that mavui. So now the Gemara is saying that's all true when it comes to the width of the Tzuras HaPesach being mesakein and the height of the mavui that the amaltera is coming to mesakein. But ask the Gemara, Ipchomai, what about the opposite? In other words, does the Tzuras HaPesach also help to be mesakein the height? And would we say the vice versa, would the amalter will also help to mesakein the width? Toshma, the Gemara brings a brisa on top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. The Tanya, Mavui shehu gavoya me'esrim amo yemait. If the mavui is higher than 20 amos, then we might decrease it. If you have a tzuras HaPesach, you don't have to mimait. In other words, that already will be a tikkun. That will answer and explain in regards to the tzuras HaPesach that will mesakein both the width as well as the height. But the amaltera, what's the din in regards to the width? Does the amaltera also help for the width? Toshma, let's bring the following proof. The Tanya, it states in the Brisa, Mavui shehu gavoya me'esrim amo yemait. If the height of the mavui is beyond esrim amo, then you must decrease it. Veharochav me'eser yemait. And if the width of the mavui is beyond eser amos, you also must minimize it. V'im yesh lo tzuras hapesach eino tzorich lemait. If you have a tzuras hapesach, the Brisa says you don't have to be mamait. V'im yesh loy amaltero eino tzorich lemait. And if you do have an amalter, you also would not have to be mamait. My lava seifa, is this now not talking about the seifa when that width is beyond eser amos, that an amaltero will then help to be mesakein? Says the Gemara, lo, you have no proof. Areisha is going on the ratio. That which it says that the amalter is mesakein is going on the ratio that says when it's higher than esrim amma, the amalter will work to mesakein it. Says the Gemara, Vaiter masni lo Rav Yehuda lechia bar Rav kamei de Rav. Rav Yehuda taught to Chia bar Rav in the presence of Rav what it states here in our Mishnah, that it says if you have a Tzuras HaPesach, even though the width of the entranceway is beyond 10 amos, the Tzuras HaPesach will mesakein it. Eino tzorich lemait. Omar le, so Rav said, Asnei tzorich lemait. Teach that you do have to be might. In other words, Rav says that the Tzuras HaPesach is not going to remedy the fact that it's beyond a width of Yud Amos. In other words, Rav, who's a Tana Upalig, is arguing on our Mishnah. Omar Rav Yosef midivrei Rabbeinu nilmad. From the words of Rav, who says that Tzuras HaPesach does not work to remedy the width of a mavui beyond Yud Amos, then we can also learn from his statement that a chotzer sheruba psochim v'chaloinos eino niteres b'tzuras HaPesach, that a chotzer that has a roiv of openings and windows will also not work to have a tzuras HaPesach mesakein it. My taimo, what is the reason? Since when it comes to the width of the mavui beyond 10 amos, it's oiser, and the tzuras HaPesach does not work to mesakein. Uparas meruba ala oimed oiser bechotzer, and a paras meruba ala oimed is also oiser in a chotzer. So then ma yoiser me'eser ha oiser b'mavui eino nita b'tzuras HaPesach, just as the width of a mavui, if it's beyond 10 amos, the tzuras HaPesach will not fix it, it will not mesakein it. Af parutz meruba ala oimed oiser bechotzer eino nitar b'tzuras HaPesach. Similarly, then the parutz that meruba ala oimed in a chotzer, the tzuras HaPesach will not also remedy that. Ask the Gemara, ma liyoiser me'eser ha'oiser b'mavui. In the case of the mavui beyond eser amos is oiser, shekein lo hitarti boy eitzil pasei b'reyos l'Rabbi Meir. That's because that in the case of pasei b'reyos, what we spoke about before, you have a situation where the chacham were mekil, when the olei regalim would go on their way to the regel, and they would be situated in a certain place on Shabbos next to a be'er, and they'd want to draw water from that be'er. So they'd have a problem because the be'er, in its diameters, is going to be a Rishus HaYochid, and they are situated in the Rishus HaRabim outside of the be'er. So how can they draw water? It would be a problem of a hoitzah, bringing out from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. So therefore the Chacham made a special kula that enabled Pasi Bereyos would be on each corner, a amma by an amma on each corner, and it would be open in between. According to Rabbi Meir, he says that it can only be a distance of eser amos in between each of these corners. Therefore, meaning the amma from each corner has to be a maximum distance of eser amos. So here it says that there's a kula in regards to pasti bereyos that does not exist by mavui. So let's read it again. Ma leyoser me'eser ha'oiser b'mavui shekein lo hitarti boy etzel pasti bereyos lo Rabbi Meir. In regards to the eser amos maximum of mavui, beyond that it's oser. That's because it doesn't have the kula of pasti bereyos that has beyond eser amos. Toimar beparus meruba al ha'oimed ha'oiser b'chotzer. Whereas when it comes to when there's more space than the walls of a chotzer, that is oiser a chotzer, shekein hitarta eitzel pasi bereyos l'divrei hakol. There, in regards to pasi bereyos, there they do have a paris meruba meha oimed, because you have much more space. Here you're saying up to 10 amos, which is beyond the corners, which is only an amma by an amma. And there we do say that it's valid. So therefore, we don't have a proof that Rav would say that the Tzuras HaPesach is not going to then mesakein a chotzer that's beyond, that's parus meruba ala oimed. Even though Rav does say that when it comes to the size of a mavui beyond 10 amos, it's not, the Tzuras HaPesach is not mesakein, but we cannot prove and carry that over to the case of the chotzer of parus meruba ala oimed. Says the Gemara, let's bring a proof to the one who holds that a Tzuras HaPesach will not be mesakein that which is parus meruba ala oimed. Defonois halolu sheruban psochim v'chaloinois. If you have defonois that most is a opening and a window, mutter. Ubilvad sheyeh oimed meruba ala parut, providing that you have that it's oimed, the parts that it's closed, is greater than the parts that is opened. Ask the Gemara, you just said in the beginning, the phonos that are ruban, psochim, and chalonos, the majority is doorways, are openings and windows. And then you said afterwards that it's providing the oimei meruban alapois, the closed is greater than the opened. How could that be? Sheruban sakadaik, ask the Gemara. Elo ema sheribo bohen psochim v'chalonos. Rather, you have to say not ruban, but riba. There's many of these openings and the windows that are on this area in this wall. Ubilvad, providing sheyeh oimem ruba alaporit, so long that the closed part is greater in its collectivity than the open part. So here we have a proof like the Manda Omer that Tzuras HaPesach, even though you have the openings that are doorways, it says that are going to be Tzuras HaPesach, nonetheless, it would not misaken if it's not going to be Oimei Meruba Alaporitz. Rav Kahana says the Gemara weiter, Kitanyo Hahi Bepischa Shimoy. The Gemara says now, Rav Kahana says that you don't have a proof over here for the Manda Omer that Tzuras HaPesach does not work for Porus Mubala Oimed. Why? Because this Pesach, these Pesachim that we're talking about in this, that we just quoted before, is talking about Pische Shimoye. These are openings that are really invalid. They're mekulkal. They're broken types of openings, which are not really a proper Tzuras HaPesach. My Pische Shimoy, what is a Pesach that is Shimoy? Pligi be Rav Rechumi v'Rav Yosef HaMachlekes. Chad Amar de Lesin Lehu Shokfi. One says that it's missing Shokfi. The Chadamar de Les Lehu Tikri. The first opinion says Lexle Shokfi means that its side posts are missing stones throughout, and therefore it's not a valid Tzuras HaPesach. The other Manda Homer says that it's missing in the Tikra. You have a proper side posts, but the top above it is missing. So therefore you don't have a Tzuras HaPesach. That's why, therefore, it would not be a tikkun unless you have the oime meruba ala porutz. But you don't have a proof for the Manda Omer that Tzuras HaPesach is not going to misake in porus muba ala oimed. Because over here we're talking about Tzuras HaPesach that's not valid. Says the Gemara, Va'af Rabbi Yochanan sover lo lohod Rav. Even Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Rav that Tzuras HaPesach does not misakein the width of a mavus beyond Yud Amos. The Omar Ravim Barav Ado Omar Rav Yitzchok Maise Ba'odem Echod Mibikas Beis Charson. There was a certain Maise that took place in this area of the valley of Beis Charson. Shenoat Dalid Kundisin Ba'arba Pinois Hasodeh. He took 4 poles and he stuck it into the corners of his field. Umosach Zmoro Alein. And he pulled the zmara on top of the poles. In other words, what he did was he created Tzuras HaPesach. The Chacham said this is going to be a valid Tzuras HaPesach for Kilayim. In other words, Kilayim means that you cannot have a vineyard, you cannot have vines growing together with other types of vegetables, and therefore the Tzuras HaPesach will define that the vineyard, the vines are within that place, and that will then separate from that which is outside of the Tzuras HaPesach, whereby you can go ahead and grow other things. So it's not going to be an admixture of kilayim. So they validated such a Tzuras HaPesach. V'omrei shlokish kederech shehitiru lo le'inin kilayim kach hitiru lo le'inin Shabbos. Resh Lakish said the same way that the Chachamim were matir in regards to kilayim, they were matir in regards to Shabbos. And therefore one could metaltil within this area because of the Tzuras HaPesach. Rabbi Yochanan Omar likilayim hitiru lo le'inin Shabbos lo hitiru lo. Rabbi Yochanan says in regards to kilayim they were matir, but Shabbos is more machamur, and therefore that would not be a valid Tzuras HaPesach to matir tiltul inside of this area. B'mayaskinon, the Gemara wants to understand, what are we talking about here? If we're saying that the tzuras haPesach, that they put the vine was from the side of the poles. If you have a tzuras haPesach where the top is coming from the sides of the poles, then that's nothing. That's not going to be a valid tzuras haPesach. Elo al gabon. Rather, you have to say they were talking about that it is al gabon, on top of the two poles. And therefore it is a valid tzuras haPesach. Uvemai. So what are we talking about here then? What is the machlik? If we're talking about it's 10 amos wide. Would Rabbi Yochanan say that you cannot carry in Shabbos? It's only Yud amos? That's certainly fine. Rather, we must be talking about that it's beyond the Eser amos. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan is saying you can't carry. Says the Gemara, Loi, you have no proof from here that Rabbi Yochanan espouses to the opinion of Rav that a tzuras haPesach does not matir beyond Eser amos. Because la'olam be'eser, we are talking about Eser. Why does Rabbi Yochanan then say that does not validate, doesn't make tiltul inside of this area? However, you have a Eser amos only. Uminat sad, and we talk about minat sad. Rav Chizda, because they're arguing about Rav Chizda, do we say that a tzuras haPesach minat sad is valid or not? According to Reish Lakish, it is valid, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, a tzuras haPesach minat sad is not valid, and therefore we can be making in regards to kilayim, but in regards to Shabbos, is not a valid tzuras haPesach, and therefore one cannot metaltel there.